Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is Tuesday, February the 12th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And it was kind of interesting. This is not a common deal, but it seems like I'm seeing it more lately than ever. But notice that we have a starting channel, and again, it's too steep. Normally, your best trends will be at a 45-degree angle like this one. So I believe what happened is this channel was just too steep. It was too overdone too quickly. And so we go into a little trading range and kind of consolidate for a while, and then we break out and start working higher into this other channel here. So I got a couple of emails. People asked me, did they see this same thing? And yes, I was trading the same two channels today. But let me show you just real quickly. We had this channel, then we had a break of that trend line, and then notice we had a couple of legs up to a new high, and then we went into this kind of little range here. And what some people forget about or don't quite understand is that a break of a trend line and two legs up to a new high does not always mean you will get a trend reversal. Most of the time you will get a trend reversal, but it could be nothing more than an extended correction, and that's what we got here that lasts for an hour or more, but usually at least an hour. And then it will break out of that range or that correction and move on. A correction doesn't always have to be a range. It could have corrected down for an hour or so and then reversed. And you'll see that quite often. So, but anyway, I believe that you could even look at today's like that. We had the small channel. It didn't go very high, but we've been in this range. And of course, the first time it breaks above these highs, it fails. And then we break the trend line. It's a two-legged correction there. So hopefully you can see that one leg down, pull back, second leg down. It's a measured move. And then we had a couple legs up to a new high, and then we started correcting. And we started correcting, just see how long it lasted, but it was well over an hour. I'd say we started correcting from 9:30, and then right here it's 11:30 before it broke out and started trending again. So that's 2 hours. So that's more than enough to meet the rules, and then a new trend can start or another channel or whatever. But I believe the whole time we were just in a flatter channel here. Again, this channel, just remember this, I'm not saying, because some people I think got confused on this, I'm not saying you draw your trend line at 45-degree angle and look for prices to come to it. You draw your trend line on whatever the prices are giving you, but most of your best trends or your healthiest trends will be at a 45-degree angle like this channel right here, because this is too steep and prices will get overdone too quickly and they can't continue that kind of momentum very long. And then if you get one that's too flat, kind of like it's doing in here, it's not a very healthy trend. But if you look at the big picture, this was a 45-degree channel here, and that's exactly what you're expecting to see on a more healthy trend. So but there's no doubt this is a trading range right in here, and you got to trade your trading range rules here. And you could have shorted both times up here. There was not a very good setup, especially if you noticed this line. If you were looking down here at these lows, you might have got fooled on this one. But there wasn't a very good setup because you don't want to be going short way down here this close to the low. You had to get in up here on a limit order of some type. It'll be the only way to do that. And you could have done it again right here, and both times you would have had an easy trade. I didn't mark those because I'd spotted this trend channel, and you couldn't ignore this trend line. And so unless you sold up here blindly on a limit order, there's just no way to get in these trades and be safe. You're better off to wait on the longs that came each time down here. So those are the ones I marked. Those are the ones we'll talk about. But let's talk about each trade. The first one was early this morning. We had this, you should have had this trend line up through here, and notice we were bouncing off the EMA, and there's a little double bottom right here. Look at those. Let me back out a little more where it's a little easier to see. You got those two stems right there. That's really a failed second entry short, you had all this overlap too, so it's a failed break out of that, but there's a trap right here, and it bounces right off the trend line. And so you could have gone long right here on this. Really, it's a two-legged pullback, so it's kind of a second entry long on a bigger picture or a smaller picture it would have been. And then notice how you can tell how this shot up like that. That was because you had all these trapped traders down here. And you really should have been looking for kind of a measured move. And you notice there's leg one, and then there's leg two, and it actually went a little bit further, kind of overshot the upper side of the channel. You might have considered this whole thing as leg one right here, but I don't really see that. But you notice we did get to there before the correction started. So this maybe was leg one and this was leg two. Those targets tend to always come into play, so you can't ignore them. But anyway, there was a nice long right here. There was the overlap, but with that trap right there and the fact that just coming off the trend line, and there's still plenty of room before the yesterday's high right there, you got to assume that we'll probably test that. If there's no trend line break yet, you got to keep looking for longs, and you had one right there. And so I like that setup, especially because of that little double dip right there, that little double bottom. You never really got a decent setup here. There's definitely too many overlapping bars and dojis on this one, and there's no little trap. In fact, there was a long trap right here. Notice it broke higher, so now you tried to go higher twice. And so, but you don't want to be going short right there either, because there's a good chance you tick one tick lower and it turns up. Would have worked out if you'd have gone short there for a scalp. But remember, this is the first break of this trend line, this channel, and so we're looking for a retest. And you might have considered going long on a limit order right here. That's what I did. And you could have even considered going long right here above this little doji if you wanted, but it was better to wait on a more bullish bar. But notice this one comes along and it's not very bullish either, and then you get another doji. But when it ticked lower there and turned up, you could have been going long right there. Another easy scalp. You didn't get a runner on this unless you entered down here where the lows are across here. And really, you probably would have had that right there at the time. But you can see that when we started bouncing right there, you should have, pulled it up a little bit. And you can see that one little tick trap right there. But that's what allowed me to get in that trade right there. Whenever you get matching lows and you're looking for a retest, so you're looking for a reason to go long. It's a little bit risky to enter. I won't say risky. It's more aggressive. It's a little more risky than waiting on the right setup. But, when you watch prices enough, you tend to learn that this is a common pattern in the ES. And you get those little one-tick traps, and you better pay attention to them when you do. A lot of times it's better to wait on the second entry like here, because you see I had to ride this out a little bit. But when you're entered here, it never really went against me other than when it ticked me into the trade. When it executed my order, after that it was all above there. So this trade never really, I never took any heat at all. It touched break even a few times, but that was it. And it would quickly bounce off there each time. So nice setup. Depending on how you entered, you might have got some runners. But I'll be honest, my runners I exited right here. It's not worth riding all this out hoping that this is going to happen here, because you don't know that. So I'd rather exit and take maximum profits and then look for another entry. And so I exited right here, one tick before the high when that ended as a doji there. So. Okay, had a little slight interruption there. I'm sorry. I think we were talking about this trade here. But once you had these couple of swings here, you have to draw a trend line here. You don't know if it's ever going to come into play, but you got to draw it there. And you notice if I just make a copy of that and drag it up, look at there. And then that's, it's obvious that that's some kind of channel, and you cannot ignore that. And but it's obvious too that you got support across here and you got resistance across here, so you can't ignore that either. So you got to pay attention to all of these things. And I went short right here simply because this was a new high after the trend line break, and you almost always get a correction of, of some point that lasts at least an hour. So, I'm thinking possible reversal and maybe a range day, and we're coming back down here. So obviously you got to take this short. That's a double top, a failed break higher, and I'll be honest with you, I just dropped a limit order in there and got short right there. I only got a tick extra above you though, so actually it would have been about a 2 tick lead on you by getting in there. But what that will do a lot of times is it allows you to keep a runner. You can see this time it did, but a lot of times it'll allow you to, your runners to survive, and I'll talk about it right here as well. Nice easy scalp, no runners. Again, you don't know if you're going to get a reversal or just a correction, but that was when this setup right here, it got a little bit concerning, but we worked on lower below that, and you can see there's a little breakout pull back there. And you could have waited and gone, you could have even gone short right here coming off this high. It was worth taking because you've had the trend line break, the 2 moves to a new high. You've got all this resistance up here. So even right here, actually when that bar formed, I would not have gone short there, because that really makes it questionable, because then you got 3 overlapping bars, 2 of them are dojis. A lot of reasons, but notice that this opened here, traded all the way up here, and then closed here. That's fairly bearish, but still, I don't think I would have gone short below that with those 3 overlapping bars, because it's too big a chance for it to come up here and make one more run to a new high and then sell off. So not worth risking, in my opinion. But then guess what? We come down here to where we got these lows, these matching lows right here, and we end up with a little double bottom, a couple of dojis. And it's almost the reverse of this right here. You drop a limit order in there, and guess what? One little tick lower, and then, okay, I'm sorry, I'm a popular guy today. Everybody needs something. But anyway, we were talking about this trade. I just dropped a limit order here. With that trap right there, it'd be okay to go long above those matching highs. Normally you wouldn't want to go long out of this stuff, but you got this trap, you got that bounce right off of that trend line. I mean, it just doesn't set up much better than that. And it's probably coming back up here. And, this is a good place to even think about exiting. Of course, you don't always want to exit here, because sometimes it will go on through like this. But at this point, this was fairly strong resistance. There's no short that sets up here, because unless you use that limit order like I talked about a minute ago, because you don't want to go short right there this close to what looks like a trend channel line right here, or a trend line. And, and look what happens. It bounces right there. This circle, you could have entered long. You could have entered long right here. And you notice it was a fairly easy scalp. But if you didn't take that one, you could have entered again right here. And this one is a little more questionable than entering right here, because you don't have a whole lot of room here. But notice something that's happening here. Notice that each pullback, even though we're going a little bit higher each time too, but the main thing to notice is that each time prices pull back, notice how it's making a higher low. And that's a tell. It's telling you that the sellers, and notice especially here, all these stems, that's telling you that the buyers are getting stronger and the sellers are getting weaker. And that's a little clue. It doesn't mean it's always going to break out. And still, you don't really want to be trading the breakout up here. You want to wait on a breakout pullback. And I probably should have circled that one. I'm going to go ahead and circle it and make it green. It's a little bit more aggressive than what I like, and that was the reason I didn't originally mark it. But again, you could have entered here, and you see it struggled to get through there, but it did, and you might have gotten shaken out here. You might have just exited, one tick in front of that line and just got what you could out of it. um, and then waited to see if you got a breakout pullback and re-enter again. And again, this is a breakout pullback long. I mean, this is the only way you really want to enter this trade is by going long right here. And that's a little bit more aggressive because this has been strong resistance and it didn't really bounce right off of the resistance. It broke back in and then turned up. So I didn't like it as much, but that's the only way to get that right there if you didn't enter down here somewhere and be able to hang on. And I just, again, I didn't have that marked for that reason, but I think it's worth marking in green. And actually, one of the traders wanted me to, had asked me to start making these a little darker, colored inside. But just so you know, these are all blue, these four. This is red, and this one's green. And I'll try to remember to do that. It's such a habit of doing it this way. I know I forgot yesterday, and I forgot again today until I just now realized it. So I'll try to remember that. It's not that much bigger deal to color the inside of the circles as well, but this is the only green one. These two are red, and the other four down through here are blue, just in case you're having a hard time distinguishing that. Another thing a lot of people don't realize is that you can make your chart full screen. A lot of people would say, I can't see the bars, but they look down in your right-hand corner and you'll see a little square box. And if you click on that, it'll take the little box here into the full screen for you on YouTube. So just be aware of that, because a lot of people don't know that you can do that. And they're sitting there watching a little bitty block about the size of this right here when they could be watching their whole screen around this way, So every time I mention that, somebody says, oh, I didn't realize that thing. So I'll try to mention that more often. But anyway, you could have entered on a breakout pullback long there, and then notice that we had all these matching highs across here and we broke above, and that's the kind of bar you want to see. It's way away from the EMA. We hadn't touched the EMA since way back down here. Notice that there's some other little setups in here, but they're not, that's a little doji, and, you might have thought about going long there on a limit order or even there, especially right here, but it still would have went against you a little bit. And the better way to enter this is, but when you saw that bar right there, that's the signal that it's reversing, and you go short one tick below that, and then it took it a little minute to get going there, but then it's off to the races to the downside. And guess where we're coming back to? Right here to this trend channel line, and also this breakout area that we never tested. Notice what we're doing right now. We're testing that to the tick twice. So we could bounce and go higher again. But that's what you want to look for. When you break out of an important area like this, usually you're going to pull back sooner than this. And that's the question. Not many breakouts run this far, but you had some clues that you made because of the channel and because of the higher lows all up through here, and then the breakout pullback long. You don't know that it's going to overshoot. It may not have even overshot. This might have been the channel right here, and you can see that's where we got to. So, but I'm thinking this was it right here. We just got an overshot shooting them overnight, because notice how that's holding all the way up through there. No closes above that until right here. So now we got an overshoot possibly. So we may not ever check up. We may trend down the rest of the day, and you should, at this point, you should at least have your temporary trend line kind of coming down through here. And notice that we might have a little break there and then a retest. So that's another reason we might bounce from here and go higher. So we'll just have to see what happens. But that's what I saw for today. So if you saw two channels, you weren't crazy. And somebody asked me if this was a common to see one channel and then another. And it's not common, but it seems to be happening a lot lately. And I just, the price action has just been really slow, and the volume's been lower. And I even looked at a 1500 tick chart today when we got into all this chop, and and considered, just trying to go to a smaller chart without getting too small, because you don't want to get so small that you get hung up in these little tiny moves that just trap you. So there's a sweet spot, and 2000 ticks chart has normally been it. But lately, we're just not getting much movement. So I considered looking at a 1500 tick chart, and I looked at it, and I kept it up beside this one for a little bit. And there were a couple of times it would have got me in a tick or so better, but it just didn't really change a whole lot of stuff. So I didn't feel like it was worth risking trying to trade it because you're more apt to get trapped on those smaller charts. But again, it didn't really make a whole lot of difference. There's a couple of trades where I might have got a tick better, but usually if you're doing like, you're trying to enter on the limit orders as low as you can, but that's risky. The smarter traders, until you're really good at the price action, are going to wait for the signal bar because I can tell you, if you don't know what you're doing and you start trying to sneak in early, you'll be wishing you hadn't have. So don't make that mistake. If you're going to do it, make sure you're trying it on the sim trader, on the simulator, and not with your real money particularly, because you'll find out that you'll get it wrong, and even I get it wrong sometimes. If I'd have tried it here, but I knew better because this low's higher than this one, and this low, especially when you got this higher low and then another higher low from each one, and then notice the stems you're starting to get on this side and not much stem on this side. That's a clue. That's a tail is what I call it. It's like a card shark looks for clues and tails. You do the same thing in trading. They're there, and you got to learn to spot them though. So, but anyway, I'm going to wrap it up today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.